if everything is a priority, what does the word priority actually mean?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
The source material for this episode comes from an upcoming body of work around harmony by the author Matthew Coxall, who we will refer to as Matt for the rest of this podcast.
Right.
But right after we get that official housekeeping out of the way, I want you, the listener, to just kind of hold that opening question in your mind. Because, I mean, we've all been there.
Oh, absolutely.
You are staring at this massive, usually color-coded spreadsheet that lists, priority 1, priority 1A, and like priority 1 super urgent.
Yeah, the classic red, amber, green nightmare.
Exactly. And you were just watching teams burn out. They're working incredibly long hours. And yet at the end of the quarter, it feels like absolutely nothing of substance actually got finished.
Right. Lots of motion, very little progress.
So, for this deep dive, our mission is to really explore the Organizational Friction Series. We're going to figure out exactly why organizations that label absolutely everything a priority actually end up creating less flow, not more.
Yeah.
And crucially, we're going to frame this excessive prioritization explicitly as an organizational system problem. Because, we really need to stop treating this as a team productivity issue that can just be solved with a better to-do list app or something.
I mean, that is such an important distinction. It requires a really profound shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Because when leadership looks at a team that is just, drowning in work, they're missing their delivery deadlines, they are exhibiting all the classic signs of burnout, the reflex is almost universally to look at the team's local mechanics.
Like, what are they doing wrong locally?
Exactly. They ask, how can we make these engineers or these designers more productive? Or, do they need better collaboration tools?
Are they not doing their stand-ups right?
Right. Are they not planning their 2-week sprints properly? But, as Matt's work points out, that is focusing entirely on the symptom while completely ignoring the disease.
Which is what?
The disease is in the environment surrounding the team. It's systemic.
Okay, I think we need a visual to really ground what this feels like. Because everyone listening to this knows this pain intuitively, right?
Oh, yeah.
So think about a modern, complex enterprise organization like a massive 6-lane highway.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Now imagine this highway is just packed bumper to bumper with cars. But these aren't just your regular commuters. Every single car is carrying a VIP.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Every single car represents a project that has been explicitly labeled a priority by someone with, a C-suite title.
So everyone is important.
Exactly. And because they are VIPs, the organization gives every single car its own police escort with the flashing lights and sirens, demanding that they all get to go first and bypass the traffic.
So what happens?
I mean, absolute gridlock. Right. No one moves a single mile per hour faster. The highway just becomes this incredibly loud, highly illuminated, extremely stressful parking lot full of very important people just screaming at each other to get out of the way.
Yeah, the highway metaphor is brilliant because it perfectly captures the illusion of movement.
The illusion of movement.
Yeah, which is completely central to understanding organizational friction. Because in that scenario you just described, everyone feels a tremendous sense of urgency, right?
Oh, absolutely. People are stressed.
Right. The sirens are blaring, the engines are revving, fuel is being burned at an alarming rate.
Right.
But the physical system itself, at the actual asphalt of the highway, is just mathematically incapable of absorbing that much concurrent demand.
Right. There's only so much space on the road.
Exactly. And in the source material, this dynamic is examined through the concept of product flow.
Okay, product flow. Break that down for us.
So product flow is basically the analytical lens that looks at how strategic intent actually moves through an organizational system to become learning, delivery, and ultimately realized value.
Okay. And the distinction there between like movement and value is where a lot of companies get tricked, isn't it?
Oh, completely.
Because if you look at that highway from a helicopter, you see the flashing lights, you see the spinning tires. It looks like a lot of effort is happening down there.
Effort is definitely happening. I mean, people are exhausted, but effort does not automatically translate to flow.
Right.
If you look at delivery teams operating inside one of these overloaded systems, they look incredibly dizzy. In fact, they're working harder than ever. Their product roadmaps are constantly being updated and shuffled around. They're attending back-to-back alignment ceremonies all day.
Oh, ceremonies?
Right. Their backlogs are absolutely brimming with meticulously written user stories, and they might even be shipping pieces of code or, launching minor campaign assets.
So stuff is happening.
Stuff is happening. The work is physically moving from one column on a Kanban board to another.
Right.
But surprisingly little actually crosses the finish line in a way that generates real, measurable business value or customer learning.
Because everyone is stuck in traffic.
Exactly. The flow is happening locally, within the car, so to speak. But the systemic value is incredibly hard to see because the attention of the organization is entirely fragmented across 100 different initiatives.
Which brings us to the real tension here. And this is the part that makes this systemic problem so incredibly difficult to untangle in real life.
Yeah, it's messy.
Because if we go back to our gridlocked highway, every single stakeholder sitting in the backseat of one of those VIP cars often has a completely legitimate, rational, and data-backed reason why their work absolutely cannot wait.
Yes. Yeah, this is crucial.
I think sometimes in product management circles, there's this tendency to paint stakeholders as these villainous, unreasonable people who just want to ruin a development team's day for their own ego. But, that's rarely the reality, is it?
It is almost never the reality.
Right.
The executive pushing for, say, a massive new regulatory compliance feature isn't being unreasonable. They are looking at the law, and they are absolutely right.
Yeah.
Because if the organization doesn't build that feature by October, they face millions of dollars in fines or could literally lose their operating license.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's a real priority.
And then, the sales director banging on the table for a highly specific customer integration is also right. If they don't have it, they're going to lose a massive enterprise deal that underpins the entire quarterly revenue target.
So they have to have it.
Right. And the engineering lead fighting to dedicate time to fix deep technical debt is right, too. If they don't migrate the legacy database now, the servers will buckle and crash during the Black Friday trading peak.
So none of these people are villains.
None of them. None of them are lazy or uninformed.
So everyone is fighting a righteous battle, basically.
Yeah. Yes. The problem isn't that people are unreasonable. The problem is the collective illusion at the executive level that an operating system can absorb infinite concurrent demands simply because all of those demands happen to be legitimate. The system's capacity does not magically expand just because the business case is sound.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay,
let's unpack this. If everything being important and everything being entirely legitimate doesn't actually mean everything can happen now, then we really need to fundamentally redefine what prioritization actually is.
We do.
Because the way the corporate world does it right now clearly isn't yielding results.
No. The current definition of prioritization in most enterprises is completely broken.
Oh, yeah.
It has been reduced to this administrative sorting exercise rather than a strategic decision-making process.
We all know the spreadsheet.
The infamous spreadsheet.
Usually, when people hear the word prioritization, their blood pressure spikes because they immediately picture that massive Excel document. A steering committee sits down in a 3-hour meeting with a list of 50 massive features or projects. And they try to score them based on some convoluted formula involving estimated ROI, strategic fit, level of effort.
Yeah, all the metrics.
But because every single project
Yeah.
has a powerful sponsor in that room who refuses to be told no, you end up with these absurd negotiated labels.
Right.
You don't just get priorities 1 through 50. You get priority 1. But wait, marketing needs theirs to be priority 1 too, so now we have priority 1A.
Oh, yes.
And compliance is priority 1B, and suddenly you have priority 1C star alpha just to keep everyone politically pacified so the meeting can eventually end.
It's terrible. It just becomes an exercise in political appeasement.
Exactly.
Scoring work with complex, weighted shortest job first formulas or, ranking a massive 2-year backlog is not real prioritization.
No.
It creates the comforting illusion of control, but it avoids the actual underlying conflict. Real prioritization is an active, ongoing, and often deeply uncomfortable organizational choice.
Uncomfortable is the key word there, I think.
Completely. It is the act of looking at all the legitimate options and deciding what receives the organization's focused attention right now, what comes next in sequence, and crucially, what will deliberately wait.
What will deliberately wait? Yeah, that is the exact part that gets conveniently left off the steering committee spreadsheet.
Every time.
We put the top 10 things as priority 1, and we just sort of assume the bottom 40 will get done eventually, or in parallel, by some miraculous surge in productivity.
And that assumption is exactly where flow goes to die.
Wow.
The key idea we really need to land here for you, the listener, is a simple but ruthless definition.
Okay, let's hear it.
A priority only becomes meaningful when it changes what you choose not to do.
Oh, that's good.
I want to repeat that because it is the linchpin of Matt's argument in the source material. A priority only becomes meaningful when it changes what you choose not to do.
Okay, so if I just add a priority without taking anything away.
Then you haven't actually prioritized anything. If an executive declares a new massive priority, but that declaration doesn't change anything else in the system, no projects are paused, no teams are reallocated, no existing deadlines are shifted, you have just added more mass to an already sinking ship.
You're just adding another car to the highway.
Precisely.
You know, the source material, specifically when it dives into the Harmony operating model, makes a really fascinating distinction here.
Yeah.
It talks about the difference between replacing priorities and stacking them. I'd love to explore the mechanics of that, because it sounds like stacking is what most of us are doing every day.
Stacking priorities is the default behavior of the modern enterprise.
Right.
A new request comes in, say, a sudden shift in the competitor landscape requires a new mobile app feature, right?
Okay, sure.
The executive team deems it urgent, but instead of looking at the current portfolio and removing something, they simply place this new urgent request on top of the engineering team's existing already full workload.
Just squeeze it in. We know you guys are agile.
Yes. Exactly the phrase they use. And what stacking actually does is create immense pneumatic pressure inside the system.
Right.
It artificially inflates the total amount of work in progress, or WIP. And if we look at the underlying mathematics of product development, specifically queuing theory and Little's law,
Math time, all right.
we know that as work in progress increases without a corresponding increase in actual throughput capacity, the cycle time for everything in the system must proportionally increase.
Let me just translate that into human terms for a second so I'm tracking. If you put more things on the team's plate, every single thing on the plate takes longer to finish.
Everything slows down.
Right.
The team's attention becomes brutally fragmented. They are forced into constant context switching, jumping from, the legacy database migration in the morning to the new mobile feature in the afternoon.
Which is exhausting.
It is.
Yeah.
Stacking guarantees that nothing gets the deep, focused thought required to solve complex problems. Replacing priorities, on the other hand, is how you create flow.
Okay, so in a system that practices replacing, when that new competitive mobile feature drops in, an explicit conversation has to happen.
Yes.
Like an explicit decision must be made to take something else out of the active work stream.
Exactly. You must explicitly decide what currently active piece of work gets deprioritized, paused, or returned to the backlog to make physical and cognitive room for the new demand. The system's capacity is finite. It behaves like a physical constraint, regardless of how important or high revenue the incoming work is. If you want a new VIP car on the highway, you have to force an existing VIP car to pull over and park on the shoulder.
Okay, hold on. I have to push back on this.
Go for it.
Because the theory makes perfect sense, but the reality of corporate politics is entirely different.
Fair point.
If I am a product leader, right, and I try to sequence things the way you are suggesting, if I sit down and tell a powerful senior stakeholder, let's say the VP of sales, that their multi-million-dollar project is explicitly waiting on the shoulder in order to replace a priority for the engineering team, aren't I basically telling them they don't matter?
Oh.
In most companies, a product manager who does that is going to get steamrolled, or worse, fired. How does a team survive that dynamic politically?
It is incredibly dangerous politically if attempted at the team level, which is exactly why this must be framed as an organizational problem, not a team-level failing.
Okay, yeah.
Teams cannot hold that boundary if the executive tier above them refuses to back them up.
That makes sense.
But here's the calm, rational truth that senior leadership needs to internalize if they actually want to survive in a complex market.
What's that?
Important does not mean concurrent.
Important does not mean concurrent. Let that sink in.
Concurrency is the killer. Deferring work is not an insult to the importance of the work or the ego of the sponsor. When you explain it through the lens of organizational mechanics, it is the exact opposite. Deferring work respects its importance.
Wait, really? How so?
Because it ensures that when the work does finally start, the system actually has the dedicated capacity, the cognitive focus, and the clear flow required to finish it properly and quickly.
Oh, wow. Deferring work respects its importance. That completely flips the political dynamic on its head.
It changes the entire conversation.
Because the reverse is also true. If you, as the VP of sales, force me to start your project right now when my team has absolutely no capacity. You are virtually guaranteeing that it will be done poorly, it will be plagued with bugs, and it will be delivered months late anyway.
Exactly. And you will have slowed down every other strategic initiative in the company while doing it.
Ouch.
If you force your project into a gridlocked system, it just becomes another car on the highway burning fuel but going absolutely nowhere.
Right.
This raises a really important structural question, though.
Yeah.
If real prioritization, explicit trade-offs, sequencing, replacing instead of stacking is fundamentally about protecting the work and ensuring value is actually delivered, why do so many incredibly smart, well-resourced organizations actively go out of their way to avoid doing it?
Oh, I think I know the psychological side of this one.
Tell me.
Because saying yes feels amazing.
It really does.
Saying yes to a new initiative in a boardroom feels incredibly productive. It feels entirely safe in the moment.
Yeah.
Everyone leaves the kickoff meeting smiling, the executive feels heard and validated, the sales team is energized, and you look like a collaborative, can-do team player.
High fives all around.
Exactly. Whereas making a difficult trade-off, actually looking someone in the eye and saying, your project is valuable, but it is stopping today so we can focus on this other thing, requires immense courage and invites immediate uncomfortable conflict in that very same meeting.
Yeah, the comfort of yes and the visceral fear of no is an incredibly powerful psychological driver. Humans naturally want to avoid conflict, especially in hierarchical corporate environments where your career progression is often tied to likability and being seen as a driver of change.
Yeah, nobody wants to be the blocker.
Right. But this issue goes much deeper than just individual human psychology or a lack of managerial courage.
Yeah.
It gets structurally embedded into the very architecture of the organization. Take the portfolio level, for example.
Okay.
In many large enterprises, the portfolio steering group, or the PMO, the project management office, is supposed to be the arena where these massive strategic trade-offs happen.
Right, that's their job.
But instead, over time, it devolves into what Matt's work terms portfolio avoidance.
Portfolio avoidance, meaning they just sort of sit there and track the mess instead of actually stepping in to fix it.
Precisely. The portfolio layer morphs from a strategic decision-making body into a massive, heavy reporting layer. They build incredibly elaborate dashboards in expensive software tools to track schedule delays. They log endlessly expanding risk registers, and they monitor those classic red, amber, green traffic light statuses.
Oh, I've seen those dashboards.
Right. But they actively avoid doing the one thing they were designed to do.
Which is?
Changing funding, reallocating human capacity, or canceling failing projects.
Wow.
They operate entirely in the service of protecting momentum, avoiding the acute discomfort of actually stopping work. They create high visibility awareness of the overload without taking any structural action to resolve it.
So if we go back to our metaphor, the portfolio layer is basically the traffic helicopter flying over our gridlocked VIP highway.
Yes.
The news anchor in the chopper is reporting on the radio, wow, traffic is absolutely terrible down there, nobody is moving, we have severe delays.
Right.
But down on the ground, the organizational police are still actively waving more and more cars onto the on-ramp, and the helicopter is just logging the growing length of the traffic jam on a spreadsheet.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. I love that. And part of what structurally drives this portfolio avoidance is the sunk cost of commitments and the archaic way enterprise funding actually works.
Okay, let's follow the money.
We have to look at the money. Funding models in large organizations are almost universally built for absolute certainty.
Right, annual budgets.
Exactly. You go through an annual budgeting cycle, often categorizing money into CapEx and OpEx, capital and operational expenditure. You get a massive budget approved for a 12-month period based on a thick business case that promised very specific, highly predictive deliverables by a specific date.
Right, and once that money is allocated by the finance department, it's like a runaway train. The momentum is locked in.
Because funding acts as a behavioral signal. If a massive digital transformation project was approved and funded in January, the internal governance system demands that it continues to consume those funds and generate activity in October simply because it was already approved in January.
Even if the world has changed.
Exactly. The funding model actively punishes adaptation. Let's say it's June, and the team learns that the underlying technology they chose simply won't scale, or the market competitor they were trying to beat just went out of business.
So they don't even need to build it anymore.
Right. The rational choice is to stop. But if you try to pause that project, you risk having to return that budget to finance, which means your department's baseline budget for the next cycle will be slashed.
Ah, it's the classic use it or lose it mentality.
Completely.
So you just keep going, you keep forcing the engineers to build a product that you know is wrong just to justify the budget allocation and protect your turf for next year.
That's the reality.
But wait, what if they try a compromise?
What do you mean?
What if they say, okay, we won't stop the January project, but we'll just pause it for a month, spin up this new urgent October project, and then go back to the first thing once the fire is out? That happens all the time, right?
That compromise is incredibly common, and it introduces one of the most destructive forces in product development: the hidden cost of stop-start investment.
Start investment, okay.
When leadership constantly pauses and restarts work to appease different stakeholders across the financial year, they severely fragment the team's attention and cognitive load.
Because they're just bouncing back and forth.
The work isn't actually progressing, it is just being indefinitely stored and restarted. And every single time you switch a team back to a paused project, context has to be entirely rebuilt.
I don't think people outside of engineering and deep knowledge work realize how expensive that context rebuilding really is.
The penalty is massive.
Yeah.
The mental overhead of remembering where the code base was, trying to remember why a specific architectural decision was made 3 months ago, reestablishing broken dependencies with other teams, and just getting back into the cognitive flow of the design.
It's basically starting from scratch.
It can take weeks just to get back to the level of productivity they had the day they were told to pause.
You know what it's like? It's like clinging to 5 different gym memberships you never actually use.
Okay, I like this. Go on.
You've got the indoor rock climbing gym, the hot yoga studio, the hardcore CrossFit box, the regular commercial weight room, and the boutique Pilates place down the street.
Right.
You pay the monthly fee for all of them. You occasionally show up to one for 20 minutes, wander around, look at the equipment, and leave. You are spending a fortune. You are constantly traveling between gyms, but you are not getting fit anywhere.
Yes.
But canceling one feels like a massive admission of defeat.
It does.
If you cancel the climbing gym, you're admitting to yourself you're never going to be that cool rock climber you envisioned in January.
That touches perfectly on the stigma of stopping.
Yeah.
In many corporate cultures, stopping an initiative feels exactly like that personal defeat. It is viewed as a personal failure of the leader or a severe career misstep.
Like they couldn't cut it.
The culture demands that you push through, that you quote-unquote deliver, but in a mature, healthy operating system, responsible stopping is not a failure.
What is it then?
It is a sign of accelerated learning.
Oh, wow. Accelerated learning.
It means the evidence changed, the organization learned something new about customer behavior or technical feasibility, and they adapted their investment accordingly.
That is such a healthier way to look at it.
Stopping a bad or misaligned project early should be openly celebrated and rewarded, not stigmatized. It frees up that VIP car space on the highway.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's take everything we've just talked about, portfolio avoidance, the fear of saying no, the stop-start funding traps, and look at what this actually looks like on the ground when the rubber meets the road.
Good idea.
Because abstractly, portfolio avoidance sounds like a very dry boardroom problem for executives in suits. But the actual physical pain is felt at the team level by the people trying to write the code and design the interfaces.
Let's ground this. Let's paint a very specific, highly recognizable scenario, a grounded pattern that plays out in product areas across the globe every single day.
Okay, picture this. You are in a mid-sized, fast-growing fintech company. On one side of the building, you have the marketing department. They have identified a massive customer improvement and revenue opportunity. It's a highly interactive, dynamic promotional campaign designed to capture a huge swath of Gen Z users.
Okay, sounds important.
But here's the catch. To hit the quarterly revenue targets that were promised to the board, this campaign needs to be live and integrated into the app in exactly 2 weeks. It is urgent, it is high value, and it has full executive sponsorship from the Chief Revenue Officer.
Okay, that is a completely legitimate, vital piece of work for the survival of the business.
Exactly. Now look at the other side of the building. Engineering is working on critical technical resilience. Specifically, they are in the middle of a massive payment gateway upgrade.
Ooh, payment gateways, that's serious.
Very. The current gateway relies on deprecated legacy code. If this upgrade doesn't happen before the holiday trading period starts in a few weeks, there's a mathematically high probability of catastrophic operational risk.
Like what?
Transactions failing, thousands of customers locked out of their accounts, a massive PR nightmare on social media, and potential regulatory fines. This is also urgent, high value, and has full executive sponsorship from the Chief Technology Officer.
Also completely legitimate. You absolutely do not want to miss the quarter's revenue targets and anger the board, but you also definitely do not want the core payment system to melt down and make the evening news.
Right. So you have these two massive priorities. Now here's the constraint that breaks the entire system. Both of these entirely legitimate initiatives require the exact same constrained resource to cross the finish line.
Here we go.
They both need the same 3 specialist back-end database engineers to do the final integration work.
This is exactly what Matt's work identifies as the collision of legitimate priorities.
Call it collision.
Yeah. So what happens in a system suffering from portfolio avoidance and a lack of strategic harmony? Leadership looks at the situation and treats both as urgent, concurrent priorities. The executive team looks at those 3 back-end engineers and essentially says, we understand you are constrained, but these are both critical to the survival of the business. We can't choose between revenue and resilience. You just need to make it work.
Make it work. I swear, those are the 3 most dangerous words in modern management.
They really are.
It sounds empowering, like you're trusting the team,
Yeah.
but it's really an abdication of leadership. So trying to be good soldiers, the engineering team says, okay, and they start both streams of work simultaneously.
And we immediately see the downstream effects of that abdication. The illusion of concurrent priority shatters the moment it makes contact with reality.
What does that look like for those 3 engineers?
Inside that specific team, you see extreme punishing context switching. One of our specialist engineers sits down to write integration code for the marketing campaign API in the morning.
Right.
But they have to drop it mid-thought at noon to jump onto an urgent 2-hour security architecture review for the payment gateway.
Oh, that's brutal.
Their attention is entirely fragmented. They are holding 2 incredibly complex, delicate mental models in their head and constantly dropping both.
And because they can't finish either task in a solid, uninterrupted block of time, hidden cues start forming everywhere, right?
Exactly. The cues are the silent killers of flow.
So,
Well, the marketing team is waiting on that engineer to finish the API endpoint before they can launch the ad spend. So marketing's work completely stops. They sit idle.
right.
The compliance and security team is waiting on that same engineer to document the new payment gateway encryption standards. So compliance's work stops.
Wow.
Work repeatedly stops and restarts across multiple departments, generating immense organizational friction. The lead time, the time from when the idea was requested to when it is actually live, balloons exponentially.
And slowly, inevitably, the question echoes through the halls of leadership. The CRO and the CTO are looking at their dashboard, seeing the delays, and they ask, why is everything taking so long?
Which is arguably the most heartbreaking question for a delivery team to hear.
Because they're exhausted.
Because from their perspective, they are working harder, context switching faster, and burning out more rapidly than ever before in the history of the company.
Hold on, let me jump into the shoes of that executive for a second.
Okay, play devil's advocate.
Surely, if the team is struggling with this, they just need to sit down, collaborate better, and figure out a compromise. If marketing and engineering just got in a room with a whiteboard, did a better job of sprint planning, and communicated transparently, why can't they just manage their own capacity and slice the work better? Why is this leadership's fault?
What's fascinating about that response is that the instinct to blame the team's local collaboration is exactly what perpetuates the friction year after year.
Oh, really?
This is fundamentally not a team collaboration issue.
But they're the ones doing the work.
I know, but no amount of colorful sticky notes on a wall, no amount of transparency, and no Agile framework ceremonies will spontaneously create a 25-hour day for those 3 specialist back-end engineers.
That's very true.
The overarching organization has fundamentally confused importance with concurrent priority.
Ooh, say that again. They confused importance with concurrent priority.
Yes, both projects are vitally important, but they cannot physically be concurrent priorities. The executive leadership team avoided making the hard strategic boundary clear at the top level. They avoided the uncomfortable boardroom fight over which is more important for the survival of the company this specific week, quarterly revenue or operational resilience.
And because they didn't have that fight.
Because the leadership wouldn't decide, they effectively pushed an unresolved executive trade-off down the org chart, landing it squarely in the lap of 3 back-end engineers, forcing them to fail at both.
They outsourced the hardest part of their job to the people with the least amount of political power to solve it.
Exactly.
So the team is drowning because the people upstairs wouldn't make a call. But how does this happen at scale?
It happens everywhere.
Because in a real enterprise, it's rarely just one marketing campaign colliding with one payment gateway.
Yeah.
It's dozens, sometimes hundreds, of these collisions happening constantly across divisions. Let's zoom out and look at the whole machine.
To understand the sheer scale of this, we have to look at the wider operating system.
Okay.
In the Harmony Operating Model, which we will refer to as TOM, based on Matt's work, overload at the team level is deeply understood as merely a symptom.
Okay, Tom says it's a symptom. What's the disease?
The underlying disease is a systemic combination of 5 distinct elements: strategy, funding, governance, measurement, and leadership behavior.
So it's the whole ecosystem working against flow. Let's break those down because I think it's easy to just blame governance without understanding how it interconnects.
Precisely. If you look at an overloaded organization, the tragedy is that you will find every individual mechanism seems perfectly reasonable, logical, and well-intentioned on its own.
Give me an example.
Let's look at governance. A new mandatory cybersecurity compliance check is introduced before any code can be deployed. Is that reasonable?
Yes, absolutely. We need to mitigate cyber risk in a dangerous world. Nobody wants to get hacked.
Right. Now let's look at measurement. A new local conversion target is set for the regional sales team to drive Q3 numbers. Reasonable.
Yes. The company needs growth to survive.
Now look at strategy and dependencies. A new dependency coordination board is set up because teams were stepping on each other's toes. Reasonable.
Yes. Teams need to talk and align.
But when you combine all these individually reasonable mechanisms into a single operating environment, they create a systemic trap.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The funding demands we start the work. The measurement demands we push for local targets regardless of global capacity. The governance demands we wait for 6 different sign-offs. Together, they create a system that structurally encourages way too much work to start and makes it nearly impossible for anything to actually finish.
And what's wild to me is how organizations attempt to fix this chaos.
How?
When everything is delayed, when the gridlock on the highway is absolute, the managerial instinct is almost always to plan more.
Oh, yes.
If the 1-year roadmap didn't work, we clearly need a 3-year roadmap. We need more spreadsheets. We need more precise forecasting algorithms. We need everyone to track their hours in 15-minute increments.
That is what Tom refers to as the burden of planning.
The burden of planning.
In a healthy, harmonized system, planning is a lightweight coordination mechanism. It helps people align their intent and sequence their efforts.
Right, it's helpful.
But in an overloaded gridlock system, planning mutates. It becomes a massive source of organizational strain because it is being used for psychological reassurance, not actual coordination.
Psychological reassurance for the leaders.
Exactly. Leaders are anxious because they can see that nothing is finishing. Their stakeholders are yelling at them. So to regain a sense of control, they demand increasingly detailed plans, Gantt charts, and estimates from the very teams that are already too busy to do the work.
It's the illusion of control. If I have a 500-line, perfectly color-coded Gantt chart printed out on my desk, I must be in charge of this situation, regardless of the fact that the chart is completely divorced from reality.
And what mechanically happens is that the different distinct horizons of planning collapse into one heavy, agonizing cycle.
Horizons of planning.
Yeah, in a healthy company, you have strategic planning, which should be about long-term intent, market positioning, and massive trade-offs.
Okay, the big picture.
You have tactical planning, which should be about near-term sequencing and quarterly focus. And you have operational planning, which should be the day-to-day execution and sprint management.
Makes sense.
When a system is panicked and overloaded, they try to do all 3 simultaneously. They force delivery teams to predict day-to-day operational execution details for strategic goals that are 12 to 18 months out.
They are forcing teams to predict an unknowable future instead of giving them the space to adapt to learning. And the tragic irony is, when the future inevitably changes, when a pandemic hits, or AI disrupts the market, or a competitor launches a new product, all that heavy, detailed planning was just wasted effort. It's scrap.
Which leads directly to the creation of what Tom calls compensating ceremonies.
Oh no, more meetings.
Yes. Because the incredibly detailed plans keep breaking upon contact with reality, the organization tries to patch the holes by creating more meetings.
Right.
They spin up dependency coordination boards and cross-functional alignment meetings and daily syncs and scrum of scrums. The calendar fills up entirely with the overhead of coordination.
So they're not doing the work, they're just talking about the work.
The organization becomes incredibly, remarkably skilled at managing friction rather than actually doing the hard work to reduce it.
It goes back to our highway. Instead of stopping the cars from getting on the on-ramp, they're just installing much better shock absorbers on all the cars, so the bumper-to-bumper collisions don't hurt as much.
That is exactly it. They are optimizing for the gridlock. And this leads us to a core truth that every listener needs to internalize, especially if you are a product manager, a scrum master, or an engineering lead listening to this.
Okay, what's the core truth?
Teams cannot create organizational focus on behalf of leadership.
Wow. Let me say that again. Teams cannot create organizational focus on behalf of leadership.
If the wider operating system, the way funding is allocated, the way governance slows things down, the way strategy is communicated demands infinite capacity, no amount of local productivity hacks, no special Pomodoro time-boxing technique, and no flawless sprint retrospective will save the team.
The system wins.
The system will crush local agility every single time.
Okay, this has been a fairly heavy diagnosis.
It has.
If the system is essentially rigged by its own complexity to overload us, what does a system that actually prioritizes well look like? How do we fix the highway? How do we breathe again? Let's talk about the cure.
Let's do it. Healthy prioritization looks fundamentally and physically different on the ground.
What does it look like?
The blueprint for a healthy state is defined by three main pillars: significantly fewer active priorities, explicit sequencing of work, and highly visible, openly discussed trade-offs.
Fewer active priorities. Just hearing that phrase feels like a relief. I imagine a team's cognitive load dropping immediately.
It should feel like a relief. In a healthy system, clear ownership and protected focus are paramount. Leadership doesn't just assign a massive piece of work, say, make it happen, and walk away to the next meeting.
Right, the make it work problem.
Instead, they actively, continuously protect the team's focus. That means a leader takes ownership of the trade-off of what isn't being done.
Oh, that's huge.
If a leader stands up and says, priority A is our focus for this quarter, they are simultaneously, explicitly saying, and as your leader, I take full accountability for the fact that priority B will be delayed, and I will defend that choice to the board so you don't have to.
They provide political air cover. They take the heat for the no. But what happens when things inevitably change in a healthy system? Because the market isn't static, right? A pandemic hits. A competitor drops a massive feature. How do you adapt to new realities without falling back into the trap of just stacking more work on top?
Healthy systems use a framework of explicit, structured choices whenever the evidence changes.
Okay.
Specifically, they build in the organizational permission to use the pattern of stop, continue, pivot, or scale.
Stop, continue, pivot, or scale. Break that down for us in practice.
In a traditional system, work only ends when it is quote-unquote done, even if it is no longer valuable.
Right.
But in a healthy system, when a team learns something new, say, after 3 weeks they realize a feature isn't resonating with early users at all, or a technical hurdle with a legacy database is twice as high as expected, they don't just quietly absorb the delay and work weekends.
They don't just suffer in silence.
No. They explicitly review the work with leadership. They ask, should we stop this entirely because the assumed value isn't there? Should we continue because the new evidence still supports our original goal? Should we pivot and try to solve the customer problem entirely different way?
Yeah.
Or if a small experiment goes wildly viral, should we scale it by reallocating capacity from somewhere else?
So stopping isn't a failure. It's a strategic, celebrated choice based on fresh evidence.
Exactly. The key idea to land here is this. Changing a priority is a sign of a healthy, adaptive organization. Adding another priority without changing anything else in the system is exactly where the overload begins.
I love that. Changing a priority is like taking a fresh breath of air. Adding a priority without stopping anything else is like trying to inhale and then inhale again and then inhale a third time until your lungs literally burst.
Yeah.
You can't just keep inhaling new projects. You have to exhale.
That is a brilliant analogy. You have to exhale to survive. And to maintain that natural breathing rhythm, healthy systems rely on a concept that terrifies traditional finance departments.
What's that?
They use capacity as a strategic lever.
Capacity is the lever.
In an overloaded system, capacity is viewed as a fixed asset to be filled to 100% utilization. Think about a physical factory floor. If you run the machines at 100% capacity constantly with zero downtime, what happens?
They break.
The absolute slightest variation, a delayed part shipment from a vendor, a machine needing 10 minutes of unexpected maintenance, an employee calling in sick causes the entire assembly line to back up and catastrophically fail.
You have absolutely no buffer to absorb reality.
Right. And knowledge work has infinitely more variation than a factory line. Healthy organizations maintain what is called strategic slack.
Strategic slack.
It is a small amount of intentionally, deliberately unallocated capacity, usually around 15 to 20%.
So people just have 20% free time.
This slack is not people being lazy or surfing the internet. This slack is the vital shock absorber that allows teams to adapt to new information, learn from their experiments, help another team with a sudden bottleneck, and absorb the inevitable variations of complex creative work without the entire organizational system breaking down.
That is so counterintuitive to traditional management.
It is, completely.
You are saying that a team intentionally running at 80 or 85% capacity might actually deliver significantly more business value over the course of a year than a team mandated to run at 100% utilization.
Yes.
Because the 85% team has the slack to fix problems instantly, pivot when the market shifts, and actually carry their work over the finish line without everything crashing into gridlock.
That is exactly what the data shows. If we connect this specific dynamic back to the bigger picture of the source material, this is where we start moving away from organizational friction and chaos towards what Matt calls harmony.
Harmony. Sounds very peaceful, but I'm guessing in a high-stakes corporate setting, achieving harmony is a bit more rigorous than just having everyone sit in a circle and hold hands.
It is deeply mechanically rigorous. Harmony is formally defined as the coherence between those 5 elements we discussed earlier: strategy, funding, governance, prioritization, and leadership behavior.
Okay, so bringing it all together.
It means all those individually reasonable mechanisms are finally calibrated and pulling in the exact same direction. The funding model allows for pivoting. The governance model trusts the teams. The leadership protects focus.
And it doesn't mean there's suddenly no conflict in the boardroom, right?
Not at all. Harmony does not mean everyone magically wants the same thing. The marketing VP still desperately wants revenue, and the engineering VP still desperately wants resilience. Conflict is natural.
So what changes?
Harmony simply means that those competing outcomes are translated into clear enough trade-offs at the executive level that people lower down can actually act on them.
The boundaries are clear.
Yes. The organization has explicitly decided how to balance growth versus stability for this specific quarter, and the delivery teams don't have to guess or absorb the pain of that indecision.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the Organizational Friction Series, I want to ask you, the listener, to reflect on your own organization. Look around your office or your Slack channels or your Jira boards and look for the practical signals of a system that is struggling with this.
It's important to look for the signals.
According to the harmonized source material, there are a few key diagnostic questions you should ask yourself. First, what work is currently active but not progressing meaningfully? Are there massive projects where the weekly status update has been a variation of still in progress for the last 6 months?
Also ask yourself, what commitments are no longer responsible to keep? Just because funding was allocated and a business case was approved back in January doesn't mean the work still makes rational sense to pursue in October. Are you brave enough to stop it?
And perhaps the most revealing, challenging question of all, what trade-offs is your leadership actively avoiding right now? Where are they saying yes to every single stakeholder and simply letting the teams figure out the impossible physics of getting it all done?
If everything currently labeled a priority cannot happen at the same time, who is actually deciding what happens first?
Is that decision being made intentionally, or is the organization leaving teams to discover it through overload?
If this tension feels familiar, it is one of the signals harmony is designed to surface.
And remember to visit agileproducthub.com